Sometimes horror doesn't come crashing in with screams, it seeps, slow and silent, into the cracks of your life. These words don't just start a story. They confess a truth. A quiet, raw truth whispered by someone teetering on the edge of sanity. There's no dramatic flourish. No attempt to make sense of what happened. Just trauma, laid bare. That line, "She knows I live there," it changes everything. It means this isn't over. It means the nightmare followed him home. It's not about what happened one night, it's about what still might happen tomorrow. This isn't a memory being retold. It's a warning. A desperate, terrified warning. The kind you whisper when you don't know if something might be listening. It was just past midnight. The streets were quiet, painted in the soft orange glow of distant streetlights. The city felt asleep. Not dead, just resting. I'd left my friend's house in good spirits. We'd laughed, shared a few drinks, nothing heavy. I was buzzing, sure, but not wrecked. I was clear-headed enough to make a good decision, leave the car behind, walk it off. It wasn't far. A 20-minute walk. Not cold. No traffic. I even welcomed the solitude at first. The kind of peace that only comes when the world around you shuts down for the night. With every step, the quiet grew deeper. Only the faint rhythm of my shoes hitting the pavement kept me company. That, and my own thoughts. It felt safe. Familiar. My neighborhood was decent. I'd done this walk dozens of times. There was no reason to feel uneasy. But then again, unease doesn't need a reason. It creeps in like fog, quiet, invisible, until you can't see what's in front of you anymore. And that night, something was off. I didn't realize it yet. But I would. You never know the last time you'll feel normal until that moment is already behind you. I couldn't have known it, but those 20 minutes were about to change everything. Because something was waiting out there in the dark. And I was walking straight toward it. It started with a simple glance. Just an instinct. A whisper in my gut telling me to check behind me. Maybe I'd heard something. Maybe I felt something. I don't know. But I turned. And that's when I saw her. She was standing a block behind me, directly in the middle of the road, utterly still. Not walking. Not fidgeting. Not even swaying with the breeze. Just planted there. Like a statue. The figure was small, maybe 4 feet tall. A child. A girl, I assumed, because of the long, jet black hair that fell over her face in thick, uncombed strands. It hung low, almost to her waist, concealing any expression she might have had. She didn't say anything. Didn't move. Didn't even seem to notice me. But I noticed her. And I couldn't shake the feeling that she had been there longer than I had realized. Like she'd been watching me the whole time, waiting for me to turn around. Something inside me recoiled. There's an instinct we have as humans, an ancient alarm bell that rings when something doesn't make sense. A child standing alone at midnight, in the middle of the road, in total silence? That bell was screaming. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you go check on her? Believe me, I asked myself the same thing later. But in that moment, survival outweighed sympathy. My drunk brain wasn't completely stupid. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. I kept walking. Faster than before. I tried not to look back again, but I did. Of course I did. She was still there. Same spot. Same posture. Still watching. Still waiting. And somehow, I knew she would follow. I changed streets. Took a sharp turn. Tried to shake the unease like it was something clinging to my back. I told myself maybe she was just a kid. Lost. Or playing a prank. I didn't believe it, but lies feel good in moments like this. The new street was darker. Fewer streetlights. The kind of silence that makes your ears strain to hear something, anything. And then I did. A giggle. It cut through the night like glass dragging across tile. High-pitched. Childlike. But distorted, like it wasn't meant for human ears. Faint and far away. And yet, somehow, right beside me. I froze. Every hair on my body stood on end. That kind of sound doesn't belong in the real world. Not at that hour. Not in that place. I turned. There she was again. Closer this time. Same black hair. Same still posture. Only now, she was in the shadows, just outside the reach of a flickering street lamp. I still couldn't see her face. But I could feel her eyes on me, watching me from behind that curtain of hair. I stood there, heart thudding in my ears, legs locked in place. Then she took a step forward. Just one. That was all I needed. Adrenaline surged, and I spun around, power walking with everything I had in me. My house wasn't far, maybe 4 or 5 blocks. I told myself if I could just make it there, I'd be fine. Lock the door. Forget this nightmare. I didn't look back, until I had to. One last glance. Peek. And what I saw nearly sent me to my knees. Just past the house on the corner, peeking from behind its brick wall, was the same black-haired girl. Only her head visible. Tilted. Watching. Unmoving. Her presence wasn't just unsettling now, it was wrong. Like a glitch in reality. Something that didn't belong in this world, but had squeezed into it anyway. This was no lost child. This was something else. Home is supposed to be your safe zone, until it's not. I didn't stop running until my feet hit my front porch. Fumbling with my keys, I jammed one into the lock, nearly dropping it. My heart was beating like a snare drum. When the door finally opened, I slammed it shut behind me and locked every bolt, latch, and chain I had. The deadbolt clicked into place like a gun being cocked. I leaned against the door, catching my breath. Safe. At least, that's what I told myself. I paced the living room, trying to make sense of everything. It was just a kid, I reasoned. A prank, maybe. I'd had a few drinks. Maybe my brain filled in the gaps with fear. It happens. Hallucinations. Overreactions. Right? I needed to do something normal. Something mundane. So I went to the kitchen. Opened the fridge. Leftover pizza from earlier that day, cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. I popped it in the microwave, the humming sound oddly soothing. The normalcy helped. The routine. I felt a small shred of control return. Then, on reflex, I glanced out the front window. And there she was. Standing still. In the middle of the street. Just beyond my front yard. Not facing me. Not even looking at the house. She was looking down the street. As if. Still searching. As if I wasn't home yet. Something about that detail chilled me more than if she'd been staring straight at me. That blind patience. That knowing. I dropped the curtain and stepped away from the window like it burned me. No. This isn't real. It's just your mind messing with you. She's not even looking this way. I laughed. A forced, shaky thing. Are you really this scared of a little girl? I muttered aloud. But that question never got answered. Because that's when the doorbell rang. What do you do when the thing outside knows exactly where you are? Ding dong. The sound was sharp. Mechanical. Innocent, on any other night. Not this one. My breath hitched. The room suddenly felt smaller, colder. Ding dong. Again. Louder, somehow. Sharper. The chime echoed through the hallway like a scream in a crypt. I stood frozen. My body wanted to move, but my mind refused to let it. I was caught in a silent war between logic and fear. She couldn't know I was here. She was just a little girl. Wasn't she? Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell hammered the air in rapid bursts, then came the banging. Bang. 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 Tiny, deliberate fists slamming into wood. A rhythm of insistence. She wasn't just ringing the bell now. She was trying to get in. My heart galloped in my chest like a panicked animal. I backed away slowly, unsure what would happen if I made a noise. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part begged me to vanish. Then it all stopped. Like a switch was flipped. No sound. No movement. Nothing but silence so complete it felt unnatural, like the world itself was holding its breath. I waited, paralyzed. Then I crept toward the door. Didn't want to, but something compelled me. Some mix of dread and fascination. I had to know. I leaned forward and looked through the peephole. At first, nothing. Just the empty porch. Night air. Streetlight haze. Then, Something moved. Something low. I adjusted my view, tilted down, slowly. And there she was. A child-sized head, just below the line of sight. Hiding. Waiting. Her black hair draped messily around her face, shrouding it in shadows. Then she looked up. And I felt my soul leave my body. Because where a face should have been, there was nothing. No eyes. No nose. No mouth. Just a smooth, pale, skin like canvas. Like a mannequin's head sculpted from bone-white clay. It was unnatural. Inhuman. Wrong. I stumbled back from the door, nearly tripping over my own feet. My stomach twisted, and I tasted acid in the back of my throat. I don't remember how long I sat on the floor, shaking. Eventually, I stood up. I needed to check. To know. I forced myself forward again and pressed my eye to the peephole. She was gone. No sound. No trace. No presence. But the silence outside was no longer comforting. It was hunting. The moment you realize, she's already in. I dropped into the nearest chair like my legs no longer remembered how to hold me. My hands were trembling, my breath ragged. Every part of me was trying to understand what I had just seen. No face. No eyes. No soul. Just skin. My thoughts were spiraling. Maybe it was a hallucination. Maybe stress, alcohol, and exhaustion had created a waking nightmare. I clung to that lie with all the strength I had left. But the silence was wrong. It wasn't peaceful. It was pressurized, heavy, tense, like the moment before a thunderstorm or a scream. Then, I heard it. A sound that shattered the quiet and carved fear into my bones. A giggle. High-pitched. Familiar. But this time, it wasn't outside. It was inside the house. It echoed faintly from somewhere upstairs. Or the hallway. Or maybe the kitchen. It didn't matter. It was here. The scream caught in my throat. My skin went cold. My brain stopped functioning as anything but a survival engine. I didn't think. I didn't look. I just ran. I bolted from the chair and flew toward the front door, flinging it open so hard it slammed against the wall. I didn't stop to grab a phone, or shoes, or keys. I didn't even stop to close the door behind me. I ran barefoot down the street, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. The pavement tore at the soles of my feet, but I didn't feel it. Adrenaline numbed everything except my fear. I didn't know where she was. I didn't care. I just knew I had to get away. The truth is worse than you imagined. I didn't want to look back. Every instinct screamed at me to keep running, to put as much distance as possible between me and that house. But something deeper, some awful, lingering compulsion, forced my head to turn. Just once. Just a glance. And that was enough. Through the large front window of my house, illuminated faintly by the soft yellow glow of my kitchen light, I saw her. But she wasn't a child anymore. She had grown, or revealed herself. Her small frame was gone, replaced by something tall and impossibly thin, like her bones had been stretched by some unseen force. Limbs too long. Shoulders narrow and sharp. Her skin still pale, still smooth, still faceless. Black hair hung lower now, more like a shroud than hair, thick, wet-looking strands cascading down the front of where her face should have been, framing the blank space like curtains around a void. She didn't move. Didn't press against the glass. She simply stood there. Perfectly still. Not in hiding anymore. Not stalking. Watching. As if she wanted me to know. As if she wanted me to see her, see what she really was. That wasn't a little girl. That was something else. Something that had only worn the shape of a child. A disguise, just convincing enough to lure you in. But now, the mask was off. There was no need for it anymore. She had been inside the whole time. And now she had my house. I turned back and ran harder, the image burned into my brain, those long limbs, that faceless head, that silent, knowing posture. She didn't chase me. She didn't need to. 'Cause now, she knew where I lived. The horror doesn't end when you run. I made it to my friend's place. Barefoot. Breathless. Bleeding from the soles of my feet. I must have looked insane when I banged on his door, screaming for him to open it. didn't ask questions, just let me in, locked the door, and helped me sit down. Every door. Every window. I checked them all. Twice. At night, I didn't sleep. I sat on his couch with the lights on, flinching at every creak of the floor, every gust of wind against the walls. Waiting. Listening. I haven't been back to my house since. I don't care about my clothes, my bed, my life that I left behind there. They can rot with whatever that thing is. But that's not what haunts me. What truly terrifies me is that I didn't see her follow me. I never looked back again. And so I can't be sure that she didn't. That silence I thought was safety, it might have been her, just keeping pace. Maybe she's still out there. Maybe she's here. Maybe she's watching me now, from just behind that door, or from the shadows of a window I forgot to check. Because no matter where I run, no matter where I hide, she knows where I live. And now, I think she knows where you live too.